Shalom again, brethren. I want to share this lesson study with you, and it's regarding our children, teaching our children self-control, how to navigate through these challenging times that are before them, especially with the agenda that the globalists are pushing, the LGBTQH AI, and that is the artificial intelligence, and the TH, the transhuman agenda. In Barbados, we know that there's a slogan that is being used, the bullying of our children to accept the trans agenda. That being said, brethren, I want to engage you in reading Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to verse 7. It says, "And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." No, we are commanded to teach the words of the Most High to our children diligently. And if we are commanded to teach the words of Scripture to our children diligently, it simply is telling us that it is not something hard for our children to grasp and to understand. When we go to the book of Proverbs chapter 22, we read, it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Brethren, when we teach our children from young, from in the womb, when we speak to our children the words of Yahuwah, to our children in the womb, even when they are birthed, we continue to do this. And throughout the toddler stage of their life and the adolescence part of their life, the young adult part of their life, they will continue to remember the things that they were taught by mom and dad that has proved to be good and right. Saying this to show us that within the guidelines of how to teach our children according to what is laid forth before us in Scripture, it will save our children from a lot of the negative things that they may have to endure as time goes forward. One of the greatest things that we need to instill in our children is self-control. And once we can instill self-control in our children, it gives them a good start going forward. Self-control includes the ability to restrain impulses. Remember, the adversary, he plays on our impulses as well. Even us adults, he does this. So once we are able to train our children how to deal with impulses, then they have a start. We can teach our children how to put others before themselves. We can also teach our children to delay gratification. You know, oftentimes we may treat our child to a snack, maybe a chocolate, or maybe a special fruit or a vegetable, which is all good. But oftentimes you find that they discard every notion of patience, every notion of waiting, to enjoy this snack. And instead of understanding that we can wait, sometimes the children become so engaged in self-gratification that it encourages an attitude of gluttonousness. We also need to focus on teaching our children to complete righteous tasks. And in some cases, completing a righteous task may be unpleasant. For instance, you may have to teach your child When you're at school, you do not eat from Timmy or from Anne or from David. And you may very well have to teach your child why they do not eat from these persons. That being said, it is very important for us to teach our children these attributes of self-control. From experience, my personal experience, I recognize that oftentimes children who have greater self-control, they can resist temptation. And even if the temptation promises like short-term rewards, they're able to resist the temptation. But on the other hand, I've noticed that children that have less self-control may be more likely to be aggressive. They suffer sometimes from depression, and they often make poor choices in what they will eat and who they will associate themselves with. Sometimes it may even lead to smoking and abusing drugs. So brethren, we need from a young age to teach our children self-control. Yahushua was an austere man, but yet he wept, and yet he died so that we can be redeemed. I'm saying this to say, brethren, we need as adults to recognize the things that we would have fallen short in, and as we come into the way, the walk of Yahuwah, recognizing these things that we would have fallen short in, and we are now learning how to correct ourselves, we need to implement these things with our children. For instance, when we read in Matthew chapter 5, verse 37, it clearly says, "But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil." So when we are speaking to our children and we say yes, it has to be yes. There's no gray area in yes. When we say no, it is no. Again, there's no gray area in no. The world teaches, well, there's a fine line between this and that. No. It is yes or no, right or wrong, good or bad. It's that simple. So we need to instill in our children how they themselves must understand yes and no. I know that sometimes our children, especially when they're young, they throw a tantrum, just to get us shaken, or to get us to do what they want us to what they would have us to do. Sometimes they even do it in public. But we as parents, we cannot give our children any kind of power when they do these things. From the time a child learns that he can throw a tantrum, and it affects the parent to the point where the parent succumbs to the child's desire or whims or demands, your yes becomes no, and your no becomes yes. That's what happens in their eyes, brethren. In short, when a child throws a tantrum and you succumb to that tantrum, the child realizes, you know what? This is a way to get a yes changed to a no, and a no changed to a yes. We have to eliminate that power, so to speak, that the child think he or she has. So when a child recognizes that when a parent says no, and the parent means no, the child learns early in life that this is a basic fact of life, that we cannot always get what we want. People who learn that lesson early in life seem to be the most fulfilled people. This is what Dr. David Walsh has noted as he observed these kinds of situations. In essence, we're not doing our kids any favors when we teach them that the world will always serve up whatever they want on a silver platter. Saying no to our child now at an early age will help him or her to say no to herself later in life. For example, if he or she is tempted to take drugs, to have premarital sex, or engage in other harmful practices, they know from a young age that these things are wrong, hence they know how to say no to themselves. When we read in Galatians chapter 6 verse 7, it says, "Be not deceived, Yahuwah is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Brethren, we can help our children to understand that there are consequences, both good and bad, for our actions. Our children need to understand that actions have consequences and that a lack of self-control will have undesirable results. If our children typically loses his or her temper when he or she gets upset, others may tend to avoid him or her. On the other hand, if he or she develops the ability to restrain him or herself when provoked, or to wait patiently rather than interrupt, people will be drawn to him or her. We need to help our children understand that it is more likely to have good outcomes when we and they practice self-control. As we read in Philippians chapter 1 verse 10, it says, "That ye may approve things that are excellent, that ye may be sincere and without offense till the day of Yahushua." So brethren, here we see that we need to teach our children how to put things in proper priority, in proper order. Self-control is not just a matter of holding back from doing wrong. It includes doing what is necessary, what is right, even when this is not particularly exciting or fun, especially with what the globalists are pushing upon our children in the schools. It is so important for your child to learn how to establish priorities and stick to them. In John chapter 13 verses 14 and 15, I believe it is. Let me get it so we can see what it says. John chapter 13 says, "If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet." I think it's verse 15 that I want. It says, "For I have given you an example that ye should do as I have done to you." So now, we have to be our children's role models. We have to be their first role models, their most important role models, so that when they see how we set the example, they emulate what we do. In turn, it helps them to culture proper and correct scriptural self-control. When our children see how we respond to unpleasant or frustrating situations, it will demonstrate to our children just how they themselves have to deal with these situations when they encounter such situations. So brethren, bear this in mind. This globalist LGBTQHAITH agenda that is being pushed upon our children, we can give our children the tools that they need in teaching them self-control, in how to deal with when it is presented to them in their schools, in their classrooms, and in their play areas, their areas of study. That being said, brother, I hope to do another lesson study on another topic on how to teach our children humility, or how to be humble. I hope this lesson is encouraging, enlightening, and inspiring. Shalom, brethren.